Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, and miscellaneous. I have just finished Tales of Grace's F Remastered on PlayStation 5, and it's time to give my final verdict on the game. As mostly a fan of the series, I've played the vast majority of the main series Tales games. I'm guaranteed I've missed a few spin-offs and Japanese-only games, and I think there's a couple on PS2 that I never paid much attention to. But I've always been a fan. The Tales series is always good for at least a 7 out of 10. Usually an 8 out of 10. Like, great games, just nothing that'll blow your mind. And I've got to be honest with you, I think overall, this was one of the weaker ones. It's a case of, it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. The story is interesting enough to hold, your focus for a few days. But it's very noticeably held back by its origins. Because for those that don't know, this was originally on the Nintendo Wii a very long time ago. It was then remastered for PlayStation 3 and now for PS5 and modern consoles. And it's still very much stuck in the Wii era, to be honest with you. So, there's nothing wrong with the graphics. They're obviously not pushing the PS5 to its absolute limits, not by a long shot. The bulk of the problems with this game comes down to level design and the combat system. The combat system is very flashy and it's got plenty going on, but it's also incredibly basic on some levels, and it's also hilariously unbalanced. So just hang around in this area full of cats so I don't get any big spoilers in this review or anything. So, the long and the short of it is, when you're in combat, you don't have full three-dimensional movement like you do in the modern titles. You can't run freely, which makes it's not impossible to dodge enemy attacks, but it makes it awkward. And to be honest with you, the balancing issues are the bigger problem, because you gain the SP that unlocks your skills through equipping titles. You unlock new moves, like stat bonuses, stuff like that. But without certain bonuses applied, it takes so bloody long, such insane grinding to get anything that's worthwhile. Like, if you want to unlock a Mystic Art, then that's basically your entire afternoon gone without the boosters. But if you've got the boosters enabled, the game becomes disgustingly easy, so you're kind of screwed either way. Either the game is so hilariously easy that you may as well not bother, or it's so grind-heavy that you won't want to. And that's a huge problem. Like, I did not have to use any healing items or revival items until the final boss. And even then, that's only because I was kind of numb at that point, to be honest with you. I was getting to the point where I was like, is this over yet? I'd been at it all day, and I wasn't paying attention, and I didn't back off when they went into his burst phase, so I got hit with his Mystic Art that instantly killed my character, so I had to revive. It's a case of, you can easily get through this entire game without using any healing whatsoever. It's insanely basic. And the one thing that it does, which is both a blessing and a curse, normally in the Tales games you get something called grade. It's essentially points you earn after battle, and you don't do anything with them in the main game itself. What happens is that once you've rolled the credits, as I just have, on a new game plus, you unlock the grade shop, and you can spend that grade on bonuses to, like, boost your experience gain, boost your SP gain, destroy enemies in one hit, that sort of thing, just to alleviate the grind if you wanted to go through and challenge, like, the optional super bosses on a second run. because traditionally those bosses are only available on New Game Plus just to pad out the runtime. But for reasons I'm not fully coherent on, this game just gives you access to the grade shop straight up as soon as you start a new game, whether it's New Game Plus or just straight out of the box. So you've got the option to enable like 5 times SP growth, which is basically essential, because without it the game is so grind heavy. But you could also make yourself completely invincible and turn the game into a total joke. So I mean, it's not that difficult anyway, even on a civilized difficulty setting. And then there's the second problem with this game, which is an unfortunate trapping of its Wii origins. It is absolutely padded to hell. The story is not particularly paced well, and the areas are so small. The world feels so small because you've got basically 4 main areas of the game outside dungeons. Your 3 main continents and a late game area that I won't spoil. And they're split into several sort of like lanes, essentially, roads. And in the early game and even going into the mid game, you go back and forward between major towns down the same roads over and over and over again to the point where you feel like you live there. And it gets so boring. You play games like this because you want to go on a grand adventure and see the world, but it just doesn't feel like there's much of a world to see in this one, which kind of spoils the whole point of an RPG, doesn't it? I don't feel attached to this world. I feel bored by it because none of the areas are particularly exciting. You've got the grasslands, you've got the desert area, you've got the snow area, and then you've got the canyon area in the late game. And it gets even worse during dungeons because everything looks the same. Like, I swear, there's the final dungeon, there's the final approach to the final boss, and you keep going down what looks like the exact same bloody corridor about 13 times. The only way I knew I was making progress is because I kept pushing on and there was a boss fight in the middle of one of these lanes. But other than that, they looked exactly the same. If you told me I was going around in a circle, I'd completely believe it. It makes dungeons a pain in the arse to navigate because there's no visual distinctness. Every single room, every corridor looks the same. They're exactly the same assets sometimes, I swear to God. And I know that was done to save processing power on the Wii, but it's a case of it drags the remaster down quite significantly because, again, you don't feel like you're going on an adventure. You're not seeing anything particularly interesting. Now, the saving grace of Tales of Graces is the characters. They are, for the most part, quite endearing. Asbel, the main character here, he goes through his growing up, and he does have some depth to him, although he is unbearably naive, even by RPG protagonist standards. His childhood sweetheart is that traditional, child-friendly, impossibly pure girl next door type, which does not exist in the real world. Trust me, I've looked. And it's like that she does at one point have a little bit of an edge to her, but that only lasts for a couple of in-game hours, and then she's back to being the impossibly pure childhood friend. And honestly, it feels a bit generic. Pascal is too precious for this world and needs to be protected at all costs. She absolutely livens up the game in every scene she's in. Other than that, the cast is kind of... it's fine. They're not bad. They have some moments. There's a few times where they actually manage to avoid the cliches. But it all ultimately comes down to the one big question. Do I recommend this game? And I've got to be honest with you, I'm going to have to say no. Now, don't get me wrong. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this game. It is still pretty much a 6 or 7 out of 10. But here's the kicker. Even at £35 brand new on the PSN store, you have superior options for around that price point. If you want a decent RPG for that kind of money, or even a decent Tales game for that kind of money. Tales of Arise and its expansion pass quite often go on sale for about the same price point. They're far more modernized and vastly superior. The graphics are far more refined, the gameplay is more refined. You've obviously got the big expansion for post-game content. And it's the better option. So unless you've already played Tales of Arise and its expansion absolutely to death, and like if you've played all the other Tales games, then by all means pick this one up. But I think there are just superior options for your price tag. I mean, if it's caught your interest and you really are obsessed with it, then by all means get it. You're not going to be like insulted by it or anything. This isn't some microtransaction stuff 2 out of 10 absolute dog turd of a game, which is shocking because we seem to get a few of those every year now, which is genuinely distressing. But it's a case of it is so held back by its origins on the Wii. It is so held back in terms of map design, in terms of the combat system being far too rudimentary. It's got massive balancing issues. It's not even remotely challenging. I guess if you played through it on the harder difficulties, you might have a little bit more fun, but it's a case of even then, I doubt this is going to bust your balls. And honestly, it just feels a bit too... It feels a bit too Nintendo, to be honest with you. It's very clear that this was made with, the whole Nintendo child-friendly thing in mind. It just seeps into every pore of the game, and there are a couple of moments where it has a little bit of edge to it, but again, unless you're playing with small children, I just feel that there are better options for your cash, even within the same series. And let's not front here. If you shopped around, you could probably find a way of getting something like Baldur's Gate 3 for about the same price tag if you were to wait for a sale and buy your credit off like CD keys or something, or Shop 2 in my case. So it's a case of you just have better options. I just feel like this shouldn't be at the top of your shopping list. By all means, put it on your shopping list, wait for a deep sale or something. Like, if you see this in the sale, because the Tales of series quite often goes on sale once they've been out for a few years, you can pick them up for like £4. It's abso-fucking-lutely worth that. I picked up Tales of Berseria on PlayStation 4 for like £3.74 in a PSN sale a few years back. Arguably one of the better ones in the series. If you can pick it up for that price, then what can you really complain about? But I wouldn't buy it right now at full retail. I just don't think it's worth it. It's too old. And at the end of the day, the remaster has done very little to actually fix the core issues with the original game, because it is just a graphical polish. They did nothing to change the map design. They did nothing to change the combat system all that much. The balancing is completely out of whack. So, honestly, do you think £35 is worth it for a Wii game that's well in excess of a decade old? Because that's ostensibly what this is. I personally just don't believe it's your best choice. So that's my final review for Tales of Graces F Remastered. I will give it a 6 out of 10. It's by no means bad, but it's one of the weaker games in the series, in my personal opinion, as someone who has played the overwhelming majority of the main series titles. So, but it's just my opinion. If you have a different opinion, feel free to sound off in the comments. Tell me where I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I overlooked. So, that's it from me. I'm going to go and find my next project, because this has taken me my entire Saturday to finish, so need something else to do now.